March 1537. South America burned under the sun, and the sound of Spanish boots echoed through the valleys. For almost 20 years, the Spaniards had chased one dream: to conquer the New World and fill their ships with gold. Among soldiers and explorers, one name began to spread like fire: El Dorado, the city of gold. They believed it was real, hidden somewhere in the deep jungles, shining with endless treasure. Among those dreamers stood Gonzalo Pizarro, the half-brother of Francisco Pizarro, the man who had destroyed the mighty Inca Empire and sent ships of gold back to Spain. Because of his famous family, Gonzalo became the vice-governor of Quito in what is now Ecuador. But being a governor was not enough. Gold, that bright promise of power, whispered to him every night. He wanted more. In 1541, he made a decision that would change his life forever. He would lead his own expedition to find El Dorado. To help him, he called on his cousin and childhood friend, Francisco de Orellana. Together, they planned to travel where no European had ever gone, into the heart of the unknown. Dear English learners, as you listen to this story, you will not only explore one of history's greatest adventures, but also practice your English through storytelling, learning real history in clear, simple words. Let's begin. The legend was about to become a deadly reality. It was February 1541 when Gonzalo Pizarro and Francisco de Orellana began their journey. They left Quito with 340 Spanish soldiers and nearly 4,000 native porters and guides. No European had ever entered the deep Amazon before. To them, it was not just a jungle. It was a mystery that could hide either a kingdom of gold or a land of death. The days were long and heavy. The air was thick with heat, insects, and fear. Every step forward was a battle against nature. Rivers that swallowed men, snakes longer than boats, and endless green that seemed alive. Food began to disappear. Sickness spread. Mosquitoes bit through armor. Men fell one by one. After 11 months, they had only marched about 320 kilometers. They had found no gold, only death, hunger, and exhaustion. 3,000 native helpers and 140 Spanish soldiers were gone. The rest were starving, killing their own horses just to survive. The dream of El Dorado had turned into a nightmare. Men began to whisper that the gods had cursed them. Some wanted to go back. Others wanted to kill Pizarro. To calm the rebellion, Pizarro made a bold decision. They would build boats and follow the great river eastward, hoping to find food and safety. It was their last chance. On December 26, 1541, Orellana took 50 men and one of the boats to travel ahead and search for supplies. They promised to return soon, but the river had other plans. The river moved swiftly, carrying Orellana and his men away from Gonzalo Pizarro. At first, they thought it would be simple: sail down, find food, and come back. But as days turned into weeks, they realized the truth. The current was too strong. It pulled them farther east, deeper into the unknown. For 2 long weeks, they searched for food, but the jungle offered almost nothing. The men were weak and starving, their clothes soaked, their skin covered with insect bites. They tried to turn back, but the current was like a giant hand dragging them forward. Every night they prayed for a way home, yet the river kept them moving, silent and unstoppable. So Orellana made a choice. If they could not return, they would continue downstream. Perhaps, somewhere ahead, the Golden Kingdom was waiting. He began to believe that maybe God himself had chosen them to find El Dorado. Meanwhile, far behind, Pizarro waited for news that never came. Days became weeks, then months. His soldiers grew angry and desperate. Some said Orellana had been killed. Others whispered that he had found El Dorado and betrayed them. At last, Pizarro began the long, hopeless walk back to Quito. Only a few dozen men were still alive. They were barefoot, starved, and broken. Of more than 4,000 people who had started the journey, only a handful survived. When they reached Quito, people stared in silence. These were not heroes. They were ghosts. Pizarro swore that if he ever saw Orellana again, he would kill him. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The river had taken them both in different ways. For Orellana, there was no turning back. The river had become his destiny and his prison. The river carried Orellana and his men farther east than any European had ever traveled. They floated through an endless green world, an ocean of trees and mist. The air was heavy and hot, and sometimes the jungle itself seemed alive, whispering around them. At first, hope returned. Along the riverbanks, they saw large villages filled with people, music, and smoke from cooking fires. Some local tribes welcomed them with kindness and food. The people wore golden ornaments that glimmered in the sun, and their towns were far larger than the Spaniards had imagined. Orellana began to believe that perhaps the stories were true. Maybe the city of gold was close. But the deeper they went, the darker the journey became. The kindness of strangers turned into arrows from the shadows. Entire tribes attacked. The Spaniards could not rest or bury their dead. The current was too strong, and the river refused to stop. Then came the battle that gave the river its name. On June 24th, 1542, Orellana's men were attacked by a fierce tribe where women fought beside men. These women were tall, fearless, and deadly. Their courage amazed Orellana. Remembering Greek myths, he called them Amazons, and from that day, the great river was named the Amazon. After 8 long months and more than 4,800 kilometers, Orellana and his few remaining men finally reached the Atlantic Ocean. They had found no gold, but they had achieved one of the greatest discoveries in history: the first full journey across the Amazon River. When Orellana returned to Spain, he was weak but still burning with one vision: El Dorado. He had crossed the longest river in the world and lived to tell the tale. Some called him a hero, others called him a liar. But Orellana never doubted what he had seen. He spoke of great towns, wide roads, and people wearing gold. He told the Spanish crown that if he could return with enough ships and men, he could finally reach the Golden Kingdom. In May 1545, his dream came alive again. Orellana gathered 4 ships, more than 300 men, and tools to build new boats once they reached South America. The plan was bold, and he carried the fire of belief. The expedition began from Spain, stopping first at the Canary Islands for supplies, then sailing toward Brazil. But disaster struck near Cape Verde. A deadly illness swept through the crew, killing almost 100 people and forcing many to desert. One ship was lost, and the ocean became a graveyard. By December 1545, Orellana reached the coast of Brazil with fewer than 100 men. Even then, the Amazon's mouth was a maze of muddy channels. They became lost, sailing in circles for hundreds of miles. Food ran out. Men died one after another. Only about 40 survivors reached the island of Margarita near Trinidad. Orellana himself never saw Spain again. He died believing he had been close to El Dorado, so close he could almost touch it. Some called him a fool, others a visionary. But no one could deny that he had written his name on the greatest river of all. The legend of El Dorado did not die with Orellana. For centuries, explorers continued to search for the lost city of gold. They crossed the same rivers, fought the same jungles, and vanished one by one. The forest swallowed them all. Time passed, and the world changed. The great age of exploration ended, but the mystery survived. Some believed El Dorado was only a story, a symbol of human greed. Others thought Orellana had spoken the truth, that the Golden City once existed but had been buried under time and trees. Then, in December 2020, astronauts aboard the International Space Station saw bright golden lines near Bolivia. At first, they looked like rivers of light. But when scientists studied them, they realized they were massive illegal gold mines, modern echoes of the same old dream. In 2022, archaeologist Heiko Prumers and his team from the German Archaeological Institute used LiDAR, laser scanning technology, to explore the Bolivian jungle from the air. What they found changed history. Beneath the dense forest were ruins of an ancient civilization. Pyramids 18 meters tall, wide straight roads, rectangular buildings, and entire city grids hidden for centuries. The discovery proved that advanced societies had once lived deep within the Amazon, just as Orellana had described 500 years before. Maybe he had not lied. Maybe he had truly seen great cities, not made of gold, but made of people, art, and culture. Today, the Amazon still hides its secrets. Out of 7 million square kilometers, more than 2 million remain unexplored. Somewhere in that endless green world, the truth about El Dorado may still be waiting, golden and patient. The story of El Dorado began as a search for gold, but it ends as a lesson about the human heart. For centuries, people crossed oceans, climbed mountains, and died in jungles for something that might not even exist. Gonzalo Pizarro returned home with nothing. Francisco de Orellana followed the river and lost his life. Yet both men gave the world something far greater than treasure, a new river, a new map, and a story that still inspires today. That is the real treasure. Not gold, but the courage to continue when the world feels impossible. Every explorer, every learner, every dreamer has their own jungle to cross, filled with fear, failure, and hope. El Dorado may be lost, but the spirit of exploration remains alive in all who keep searching.